Hello. This session is about history of Korea's creative industry, part 2, from the 1990s up to now. According to a report from Korean Film Council, in 2022, the combined sales of major sectors of the Korean film industry, which include theaters and overseas exports, amounted to 1.7 trillion won, making Korea the 7th in sales volume in the global film market. How did it possible? Ironically, the abundance of digital piracy in Korea, which forced stakeholders in creative industry, was the driving force. The government's supportive policy played a critical role as well. As the government realized the commercial potential of audiovisual products, vigorous developmental support followed. Korea's institutional interventions in the creative industry traces back to its experience as a traditional developmental state, characterized by a government-led industrial transformation of the national economy. The industrial and economic policy of the developmental state is guided by national development goals instead of political ideology or market forces. Its policy options include setting up a pilot agency, suggesting business models, guiding and protecting infant industries, and offering incentives to encourage private sectors to fulfill national development targets, all of which were exercised by the Korean government since the 1960s. Since 1993, the government has supported the creative industry as a new strategic industry leading economic growth, fundamentally changing the nature of government intervention. Producing and exporting audiovisual products became as institutionally supported as industries of electronics and cars in the 1960s and 1970s. The government reclassified the film industry from service to manufacturing sector, enabling the industry to gain better access to public funding and bank loans. The Ministry of Culture began to operate as a pilot agency, overseeing the industrial growth of the creative industry, as did the Economic Planning Board, which directed and supervised national development in the 1960s and the 1970s. In addition, a development roadmap to becoming the world's 5th largest cultural power was released. The roadmap includes detailed goals such as increasing the volume of content export 10 times in 5 years, resonating a series of 5-year national development plan with specific export targets. The government orchestrated industrial strategies to gain spillover through inter-industrial conversions, such as e-games with ICT and digital content with electronic industries. And now, Eileen, can you please explain Korea's 5-year development plan?
In the context of the Korean development experience, it is important to further consider its 5-year national economic development plans, which were implemented from 1962 to 1976 and during which the government proactively involved itself in the operations of the market. Let me begin with a short overview of the different plans. The first Economic Development Plan was initiated in 1962 by President Park Chung-hee, who also implemented the following development plans, and it lasted until 1966. It is often considered the beginning of South Korea's rapid industrialization and connected to that its economic transformation. Therefore, it represents a significant part of the country's economic history. During that period, the Korean government decided to concentrate on different aspects in order to shift its industry from light industrial products such as textiles, shoes, and plywood to heavy and chemical industries such as the steel and petrochemical industries. Additionally, it aimed for import substitution and therefore promoted domestic industries in order not to be reliant on imported goods. In this context, several policies encouraging the production of goods, reforms regarding land ownership, as well as financial policies were implemented in order to build an industrial base and to increase agricultural productivity. To support these developments, the Korean government heavily invested in infrastructure projects that were related to transportation and communication technology. Many researchers, in particular, point out the importance of human capital development, which was also part of the first Economic Development Plan. Here, investments in education and training programs were seen as an essential part of building a skilled workforce, which in turn contributed immensely to the industrialization process. Another part of the first Economic Development Plan, which however became even more important in the following periods, was the promotion of export-oriented industries. In order to increase foreign exchange and to obtain more foreign capital, the Korean government started to promote an export orientation. Following up on this part, the second plan took place from 1967 to 1971. Similar to the previous period, the main focus of this period was continued industrialization and growth through export-oriented industries, with the distinction that now the government was able to see not only success stories, but also mistakes they made. For that reason, the Korean government continued to promote the shift to heavy and chemical industries by setting up different facilities, such as the Pohang Steel Company, which was founded to manufacture steel products with imported raw materials. Additionally, exports were acknowledged as the new driver for Korea's economic development, and therefore different policies, for example regarding the exchange rate, were adjusted and newly implemented. Similar to the previous plan, those major changes were accompanied by investments in research and development for new technologies and infrastructure projects, as well as the further development of human capital and connected to that, a skilled workforce. Within the third Economic Development Plan, from 1972 to 1976, the key features of the first two plans remained the same. heavy and chemical industries were further established, export industries were more diversified, and all of those were accompanied by increased research and development to ensure innovation and further industrialization, investments in education and training to support human development, and expanding infrastructure for industrial growth. In addition to those aspects, the third plan was supplemented with the development of rural areas. Starting in the early 1970s, the so-called Semal Undang, or New Community Movement, aimed to increase agricultural productivity and develop rural communities. In total, 34,000 selected rural villages across the nation were modernized based on the government-initiated movement. However, during that time, Korea also experienced some downsides. Examples can be seen in the rapid growth of large business enterprises, while small and mid-sized enterprises were often excluded by the government. Labor rights were ignored and labor movements oppressed, and agricultural workers were sometimes not receiving proper compensation. Nevertheless, it can be summarized that the 5-year National Economic Development Plans under the presidential leadership of Park Chung-hee were significant in laying the cornerstones for Korea's rapid industrialization and economic development. They achieved a shift from light to heavy and chemical industries, economic growth through the promotion of exports, and the modernization of rural areas. All of those achievements were accompanied by continuous improvements in technologies and an increase in human capital. In 1979, the OECD finally classified South Korea as a newly industrialized country.
So, in a nutshell, Korea's creative policy is an industrial policy that handles audiovisual products as sellable commodities that boost global competitiveness of the national economy as a whole. This approach differs fundamentally from culture-oriented creative policies that prioritize keeping cultural identity through creative goods. While France is known for subsidies in creative industries, they are given to stakeholders such as producers, making it a regressive tax. Conversely, a significant portion of Korea's subsidies goes to infrastructures such as distribution channels and a skilled workforce for the development of the industry and ultimately the national economy. While acknowledging the developmental role of the Korean government, Ryu and Jin note that the different administrations adopted diverse combinations between neoliberal reforms and developmentalism. For instance, the Kim Myung-sam government started the developmental creative interventions by setting up the Cultural Industry Bureau in 1994 and enacting the Motion Picture Promotion Law in 1995. Ironically, while adopting neoliberal reforms as part of globalization strategies. Although the following liberal governments between 1998 and 2008 weighed in towards neoliberalist deregulation, the creation of Korea Creative Content Agency initiated unprecedented state support in 2001. The evolving dynamism shows that developmentalism played an indispensable role despite the dominant neoliberal ideology. Thank you. In this session, we had a look at policies supporting the creative industry in Korea since the 1990s. Thank you.